Thanks, Donna. Hi, everyone. This is Monica Gonzalez, Senior Program Director here in the Gulf Coast office. Thank you for joining us today. We just want to take this opportunity to provide some more additional green communities training. We had our session last November. We wanted to really continue the technical assistance and training we provided from that. And a lot of the feedback we got from there was really some more training around Energy Star, so we thought this would be a good way to kick off our quarterly webinar series this year. So I'm going to kick it off to Krista Egger, our Director of Green Communities, who will go through the presentation and take questions. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Monica. So my name is Krista Egger. I'm Director of Enterprise Green Communities. So I oversee our green building program that's designed explicitly for the affordable housing sector all over the country. And in partnership with Monica, we've been working closely over the last several years to try to help build the capacity of owners and developers of affordable housing and their full teams to really build projects of high quality that can easily meet and pass the Energy Star and the Enterprise Green Communities standards and the goals. And based on feedback that we received, we designed a series of 4 webinars this year to touch on the areas for which we've gotten the most questions, and this is the first of those. So today's session will be exclusively on the Energy Star for Homes certification program. And then we hope you'll join us later this year for the other sessions which we have. On June 8th, we'll focus on energy benchmarking. On September 14th, we'll focus on the process of certifying to Enterprise Green Communities. That should be right around when you're preparing your LIHTC applications. And then December 7th, to close out the year, we'll focus on green resources specifically for you in the Gulf. There's a wealth of resources and experts on energy efficiency in various areas of sustainability in your neck of the woods, and we want to make sure that you are all connected to the best tools and professionals to help create really high-quality buildings. So we'll hope you will join us again. We will also be recording each of these 4 sessions, so you will be able to access this information later on or share it with your peers who might not have been able to join today. So thanks again for joining us. So just to give you a little bit of context around why Enterprise is hosting a webinar on Energy Star is that for our Enterprise Green Communities criteria and certification program, as many of you know, it's a holistic green building program. You see on the screen in front of you the 8 different categories which it covers. And if you look at the one at the very bottom in orange, energy efficiency, that is where we address whole building efficiency as well as efficiency of lights and appliances and the types of power that you're using in your projects. And for new construction projects coming through green communities, we're asking that they certify to the Energy Star program that's appropriate for their building type. And because that's a program within a program, we really wanted to give you some additional information on that today, as well as this topic is important to us even without the context of the Green Communities program because of how the City of New Orleans, NORA, is referencing Energy Star in some of their funding programs. So today, the intent is to focus on how to create these shells of your building in the most efficient way possible, in a way that will create durability, comfort, and healthy living environments for your residents in a manner that will not cause great cost to your project teams and can be understood by you early on so you know what to expect as you're getting into the process. So the Energy Star program is the focus of today, as I've said, and what we'll be going through, I'll be spending just a second on the value of the Energy Star itself, and then I'll be going over a logistics overview of the Energy Star for Homes program, so talking about which projects are eligible for which version, the timeline for implementing various revisions or iterations of the Energy Star program, what training requirements are included, so you have an idea, you can put your arms around what is kind of the upfront work that you need to do to get prepared to certify your home to Energy Star before you even break ground or really even before you start creating your plan sets. And then I'll go through the different building details. And I'm just really going to skim the top of the surface of these and touching on the mandatory requirements, the targets, checklists, and verification associated with some of the measures that we hear the most questions with. And then finally, I'll wrap it up by giving you a couple of websites of resources where you can go after today's webinar to find more information about how to be successful. And throughout, at certain times, I'll stop for questions. You know, we designed this to be a kind of boutique webinar for the Gulf. We realize that it's a small crowd, and we want to take the opportunity to really answer the questions that you do have with us when we're together today. So without further ado, I'll get started. A little bit more information about Energy Star. It's a voluntary program managed by the EPA. So it's a government-run and designed program that's voluntary for groups to follow. It helps businesses and individuals save money and protect our climate through superior energy efficiency. The actual Energy Star was established by EPA in 1992, and if you're like me, you probably have family members that you can talk to them about your jobs, and they'll recognize that if you buy a refrigerator, for instance, with the Energy Star label, that it's going to use less energy but perform in a superior way to that same type of product, a refrigerator, without the Energy Star. But not everyone realizes that you can build a home to actually earn the Energy Star as well. So it's not necessarily about what types of Energy Star products you put in the home, but it's about how you plan, design, build, and verify the home itself. So this energy efficiency, the quality, the durability is actually built in to the home itself, and that's what we'll be touching on today. So the Energy Star website says, and I think this is a great phrase, I just wanted to share with you, that Energy Star homes are designed and built well above most other homes on the market, delivering energy savings of up to 30% when compared to typical new homes. An Energy Star home has undergone inspections, testing, and verification to meet strict requirements set by the EPA, delivering better quality, comfort, and durability. So I think all of you can be really proud when you've finished and completed an Energy Star product, that it is this mark above the common home, if you will. But also, I think one of the intentions of this webinar is to ensure that you're aware that that level of quality can be accomplished by any project team with just a little bit of education and attention to detail and the right partnerships. So that's what we're trying to do today. So let's start off with eligibility. You know, there are several different Energy Star programs. The one that we're talking about today is the Energy Star for New Homes program. So this program is relevant for single-family homes as well as units, dwelling units in multifamily buildings that are 3 stories or less. And it can be eligible for buildings that, for dwelling units in multifamily buildings that are 4 or 5 stories, if those units have their own heating, cooling, and hot water systems, and if those projects meet a few other requirements. But the point that I want to drive to you with this slide is that it's single-family homes and then shorter multifamily buildings, although the units in those buildings are certified rather than the multifamily buildings themselves. So there's a detailed decision tree on the Energy Star website if you'd like to find more detail about this, and I'll show you the Energy Star website address later on. But I just wanted to ground all of us in the context of which building stock that we're actually talking about today. So now that you know what kind of project is eligible for this program, let's talk about those logistics that I mentioned earlier on. So before you even start designing your plans, there are a couple of different trainings or accreditations, certifications that you should be aware of. The first 2 actually have to do with you as the owner or as the builder. So everyone who's building an Energy Star home actually needs to sign up with the EPA for an Energy Star partnership agreement. There's no cost. It's painless, but it needs to be done online. Accompanying that, you also need to take a training. It's free, it's online, it's 1 hour. It gives great information about the structure and the program requirements of the Energy Star program. So those 2 just need to be done once for your organization, and then you could build multiple Energy Star homes. After doing that for yourself, you need to make sure that you're partnering with some of the right people. So helping guide you throughout this whole process of building your Energy Star home is going to be your rater, your Home Energy Rating System Rater, or HERS Rater for short. All HERS raters that I'll show you in a moment have gone through pretty rigorous training about what the Energy Star program is and how to implement it on your project. You'll need to partner with one of them early on in your design stage, and they'll work with you throughout construction until you achieve the certification and your occupants have moved in. And then the other partner that you need to pay attention to in terms of Energy Star training or knowledge base really is your HVAC contractor. So in order to certify your project to Energy Star, you need to ensure that the group that you're working with for HVAC on your project has gone through and has been credentialed by one of the agencies that EPA approves. So let me get into a little bit more detail about that. So if you look at the top of your screen here, you see energystar.gov/homes. If you type that into your web browser, you'll see a web page that looks like this picture that's on your screen right here. There's lots of great information here. If you look at the 6 boxes on the lower left part of your screen under Partner Resources, you'll see program requirements, which includes all of the detail about the elements that you should include in your project. There's also educational resources, which has different trainings and different information about empowering your project team members to know about Energy Star. There's marketing and promotional resources. There's a ton of different templates that your team will be eligible to access once you sign on as a partner. Then going on to program updates and communications. As EPA updates the program, you'll find information there. Partner locator, which we'll get to in a second, and then information for home buyers if you'd like to share this information with your prospective buyers. But partner locator is the element that I really want to highlight for you here. So if you had gone to this page that you're seeing, and if you clicked on partner locator, you'll end up at a page that looks like this. So this is a screenshot that I took of the partner locator page, and I want to highlight 2 portions. One is they're both where the green circles are. So the top green circle is around a drop-down list where those of you who are in Louisiana or Mississippi or wherever you are can put in your state in that drop-down list and hit search. And then a page will come back with all of the partners that have worked on Energy Star homes in that area over a certain period of time. So if you're a builder, for instance, that's already signed up for Energy Star, you've signed your partnership agreement, but you're looking for a rater, this would be a great place to go because you can find all the HERS raters who have actually certified homes in your area. And you can also see how many homes they've actually certified, so you can start to judge the expertise level of the partners that you're looking for. If you have not already signed up to be an Energy Star partner and done the partnership agreement as the owner or the builder, I put the lower green circle on the page here around Join Energy Star, and that's one way that you can start the process of checking that box off for yourself. So let's go on to the next page. So I put in this morning, actually, so this is up to date, I put in Louisiana into that search bar and hit search, and this is these are the results that came out of that search. So you can click the drop-down under Builders and Incentives, but what you're really seeing here, what I highlighted on this page, are the different raters, because if you're not currently working with a HERS rater, that's the first step you need to take. And these 7 groups are the 7 groups that have certified Energy Star homes in the state of Louisiana. And you can see how long they've been a partner. You can see how many homes they actually certified last year. You can see how many homes they've certified in the state, and then their total. So I think this is a great place to start for finding a rater. But of course, I'd suggest that you pick 2 or 3 at least, call them, and ask them information about their experience as well as their communication style, so so you can start to determine which rater would actually be the best fit for you. There's one other source to find raters, which is going to the ResNet site, but this Energy Star site includes raters that includes all the raters in your area as well. So I'm going to go on to the next page and start talking about the HVAC side of things. So as I mentioned earlier, you need to partner with someone who's credentialed in terms of HVAC design and installation. So the Energy Star program for homes is set up in such a way to really ensure that the quality of your HVAC design matches what's needed for your home, as well as the installation is very, very well done. And the program approaches that in a few different ways. So, for instance, systems installed according to quality installation guidelines established by ACA, which is an industry standard for mechanical systems. Then there are a couple of different checklists which will be used throughout the design and construction of your home to ensure that all of the elements are operating appropriately. And those are the rater design review checklist, which the rater will use. Then there's the HVAC design report, which the rater will receive from your HVAC contractor or whomever is doing your HVAC design. Then there's the HVAC commissioning checklist, which has to do with how the system's actually being started up or installed, not just designed. And then finally, your HVAC contractor needs to be credentialed by an EPA-recognized third-party training and oversight organization, which is conveniently called an HQITO. And the two icons that you see on the right of your screen there are icons for the two organizations that currently do this HVAC contractor credentialing for the EPA. Let's dive into that a little bit more. The Energy Star website has some great information about walking you through the program. This is one of their pages about these HVAC design and commissioning requirements. And what I'd like to draw your attention to is the box that has the square around it at the bottom around find credentialed contractors. And if you clicked, I clicked that this morning and pulled some screenshots so that they would be up to date. If we go to the next page, I just wanted to highlight for you on the right side of the page, I typed in the zip code for New Orleans and put in a search area of 100 miles. So there were two organizations that came up that are credentialed HVAC contractors through ACA on the right side of your page. And then I did the same thing in the Advanced Energy Program on the left side of your page, and there were 7 organizations that popped up there. So it doesn't matter if you use the ACA contractors or the contractors that were credentialed with Advanced Energy. Either are fine, but I wanted to just put these screenshots up for you today so that you're aware that there are several organizations in your area that have been credentialed. And I encourage you to go to these websites, find the contact information for these groups, and again, call them, talk to them, see if they could join your team. And on the other hand, if you're an owner or a builder that already has a terrific relationship with your HVAC contractor, but their name doesn't show up on either of these lists, I'd encourage you to encourage them to go through the credentialing to add to their business and help accomplish this credential that can mean that they can help you work on your project and ensure a high level of quality for installation. So that's the upfront logistical information. We talked about the builder partnership agreement and builder training that happens online through a webinar. We talked about the rater training that all raters will be going through and how to find raters in your area. And we talked about the HVAC training and highlighted those organizations that have already achieved that credential in your area, but also giving you some resources to direct your HVAC contractors to if they'd be interested in the future. So what I'm going to do now is pause and look because I think there are a few questions that have come up already. I want to answer those before I start getting into the building details. So I'm going to look at those really quickly on the side. And so Audrey Evans is pointing out that ResNet is another source for qualified HERS raters. not all of whom may be listed on the EnergyStar.gov site. That's correct. That's a great resource. And I think we actually have that web address listed for you at the last slide of this presentation. So I'll show that to you as a recap with resources later. And let's see. There's also a question about the cost for raters and HVAC contractors to get certified through these programs. And I think I'll just address that at a very high level right now. So for raters to be certified with Energy Star, they do have to go through some pretty extensive training, testing. They will prepare for and then take a written exam, and they will also be prepared for and then take a field exam where their work doing the required Energy Star inspections will be audited or overseen or checked off by an appropriate rater training organization. And then they will become a provisional rater, and the first several of the next few homes that they do will be audited by a rating training organization, and then they can go on to become an official rater out of that so-called probation period. But once they're an official rater, their work will still be overseen by a hierarchy of groups overseen by ResNet. So in order to actually become a rater, you do have to pay to take the training and take the exam, and you also do have to buy the appropriate equipment, for instance, a blower door and a depth blaster, et cetera, to be set up for that. So in order to be credentialed through the HVAC, in order to be credentialed through the HVAC program, I'm not up to date on the actual costs of those, but I think that you could find those on the ACA and the Advanced Energy website. Going to look for other questions right now. Okay, so it looks like those are the questions to date on these kind of upfront logistics. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. So let's talk about what do you actually have to do to your plans in your homes and your construction process in order to be certified. So these bullet points here are the ones that I really want to focus on. So the size of the home that you're building actually affects what level of efficiency you need to achieve in the program. I'm assuming that all of you who are on the phone are doing one type of affordable housing project or another, and in general, you are not going to exceed the size requirements set out by Energy Star. To give you a flavor of those size requirements, we're talking about one bedrooms that are larger than 1,000 square feet, or two-bedroom units which are larger than 1,600 square feet, or three-bedroom units which are larger than 2,200 square feet. If you do exceed those size thresholds, you can still certify your project to Energy Star. You just have to incorporate additional efficiency measures to achieve the certification. But I'm going to assume that most of you on the phone are going to be beneath those size thresholds, and you can kind of just pass right by this house size factor. Next one, though, is a big one. So initial requirements confirmed with energy modeling. So the Energy Star for Homes program has set a threshold level of efficiency for projects to achieve. In a sense, that threshold level of energy efficiency is unique for each home that comes through the program, because the program, the certification program, is evaluating how efficient you need to be based on the exact geometry and makeup of your home, all the unique details that your home includes. And it's comparing the performance of the home that you intend to build to how that home would perform if it was just built to code. So in order to ensure that you're going to meet this threshold of efficiency for Energy Star, you're going to need to work with a HERS rater, one of these energy raters, upfront in your design process to make sure that you're meeting the program target. So, for instance, when you have a basic idea of your plans and your specifications, you'll want to engage a rater to start doing some modeling. They'll have these computer programs where they will input in the different geometric details of your home as well as the different specifications of all the different components. And those programs can generate reports which will tell you how close or far away you are from meeting the target of efficiency. And if you're not meeting it, you can work with your rater in a collaborative way to identify, well, what if we increase the level, the R value of our insulation? Would that make us meet the target? Or what if I reduce the number of windows in the home? Would that make me reach the target? I think the intention of this is that you work with your rater in a really collaborative way early in the design process and use their energy modeling as a tool to make the decisions about what specifications you have in your project, because you might not just be satisfied with meeting the threshold for Energy Star home certification. You might actually have a stricter threshold that your organization sets. Who knows? But your rater will be the one who can help you determine if you're meeting that target or if you're not. So I cannot stress how important it is to work with your rater early, because if you don't start to work with them until you've started building your home, it may be more costly for you to implement the features that are required to meet the energy efficiency targets. And there's no need to wait. Go ahead and partner with the rater early and start doing that modeling, start forming a strong partnership with that organization. Then the other 4 bullet points on this page have to do with checklists. So the first checklist mentioned here, the Rater Design Review Checklist, is a form that your rater will collect to document and verify that a number of planning and design measures have taken place. For instance, the rater will sign off that the builder is an Energy Star partner, and the rater will also verify that the HVAC contractor holds the credentials required that we spoke about a little bit earlier. And then they'll also take a look at your basic plans and specs to make sure that your insulation and window specs, for instance, seems to be matching what's required. And they'll also take a look at your HVAC contractor's design report to make sure that it makes sense and is aligned with the program. So that Rater Design Review Checklist really is kind of the preliminary step. Then the next checklist that we get to talk about is the Rater Field Checklist. So you'll partner with your rater early on in your design process. You'll work with them through the modeling stages to determine that you have the right specifications and design to meet the Energy Star requirements. And then your rater will come out on site usually at least 3 times during the construction of your home that you're certifying to Energy Star to ensure that everything's going well. Some of the things that they'll be doing will be accomplished through visual inspections, for instance, by looking at the air tightness of your building or the quality of the installation. Other checks that they will be doing have to do with actual performance testing. So they'll use equipment to measure the efficiency and the performance of various measures that are in your home. So they will use this field checklist throughout the construction of your home to document the results of all of those checks. So there's a thermal enclosure part, which has to do with the air sealing and the insulation. And then there's an HVAC system part, which has to do with the heating, cooling, and ventilation system. So let's dive into that a little bit more. When I say thermal enclosure, and you look at this picture of this house and think about, where is the thermal enclosure? This is one of the first exercises that you really want to do. You want to define where your air barrier or your thermal enclosure or your building envelope those three phrases all mean the same thing, where those are actually going to be in your home. And the keys are that it's continuous, it has no breaks, and that it separates the conditioned space from the unconditioned space. So the picture of this home that I put on the screen is interesting because it has an attached garage. The thermal barrier would not include the garage space inside that thermal barrier. So here your thermal barrier would go along the bottom of the living space. It would come up past both walls. It would go over the ceiling area, down to the floor system that separates the living space on the second floor from the garage underneath, over on top of the garage, and then down to meet where the continuous barrier started in the beginning. So if you can just imagine kind of a 3D enclosure encapsulating all of the conditioned space in your project, that's what you want to make sure is airtight, and that's what you want to make sure has insulation installed very well up against that air barrier. So when you're thinking about what do I need to do to ensure I'm meeting the Energy Star program in terms of that thermal barrier, you're going to be thinking about your insulation specs, your R values, and how well that insulation is installed. The type of insulation doesn't matter so much as long as you have the correct R values and that it's properly installed. Then you also want to think about thermal bridging, which we'll get into in a second. And you also want to think about framing and air sealing in order to make a very tight, continuous air barrier. I'm going to go on to the next page here. This is a map of climate zones. I just wanted everyone to know that if you're in the Gulf region, you're going to be in climate zone 2. And so various items throughout the Energy Star checklist reference various climate zones. So I just wanted to orient everyone that we're talking about climate zone 2 for these areas. When I'm talking about thermal bridging, I'm talking about areas of that thermal enclosure or your building envelope that are more likely to let heat pass through at a higher rate than other parts of that thermal enclosure. So if you kind of imagine the picture that's behind the picture right on top of this slide, it's a diagram of the framing of a home. And so the heat is going to travel more quickly at a faster rate through the studs than it will through the cavities, which will include insulation. So in a sense, you could consider those studs to be a thermal bridge. And the Energy Star program wants to reduce the amount of thermal bridging that you have in your home as much as possible to make sure that this shell of your home is going to be as efficient as it can be. And I think this is really critical because over the life of your home, 30, 50 years, however long it's occupied, the various lights and appliances and heating and cooling equipment will be replaced, but this shell of your building will likely not have all that much work done on it from an energy perspective. So taking the time now when you're building a new home to invest and make sure it's a high-quality envelope is critical. So there are a couple different ways that you can address thermal bridging in the Energy Star program. I'm going to walk you through those quickly because I'm focusing on this because this addressing thermal bridging properly is one of the key elements to ensure that your architects are thinking about in the early design stages of their project, because this is something that is very difficult to build in later. You can't just simply swap out one piece of equipment for another. This really has to do with the design stage. So reducing thermal bridging should be at the top of your list of next steps after you've ensured that you have all the right partners. So in the Energy Star for Homes program, there are 5 different pathways that you can follow to reduce thermal bridging, and all of them have detailed instructions. But just at a high level, the first one, you can either install continuous rigid insulation like you saw in that blue picture right before now, or insulated siding, or a combination of the two on the exterior of your home. So those studs are no longer really being the thermal bridge directly to the outdoors. And in climate zone 2, which we are, you would want to make sure that's at least an R3 for your insulation. Or you can install structural insulated panels, or you can install insulated concrete forms, or you could frame with a double wall system where you stagger the studs so none of them directly go from the outside to the inside of the project. Or this fifth one I'm seeing more often in the project that we're seeing more often than anything else, which is advanced framing. And advanced framing can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but in the Energy Star program it means these 5 things. So addressing your corners, your headers, framing, you're limiting your framing at windows and doors, you're thinking about your interior, exterior wall intersections and minimum stud spacing. So I'm going to get into each of those 5 items for advanced framing a little bit more. Here's an example of those corners. Instead of framing the corners of the exterior of your building in such a way that there's an air pocket or a solid chunk of wood, you're framing them in such a way that you can actually insulate all the way to the edge. So on the right, you see a photo of that. On the left, you see a couple of different diagrams. In a particular note, in the diagram to the left, there are some clips and backing to show you how you can attach your drywall with this particular framing method also. So that's corners, then headers. So instead of having a solid wood header, putting a piece of foam board between 2 boards will achieve the R value that's required for your headers on your exterior wall. So very low cost method to improve the efficiency of your shelf. Then this is the intersections of your interior walls with your exterior walls. And again, it's just thinking about framing it in such a way that you can increase the amount of insulation in your exterior wall as much as possible. So instead of having a solid chunk of wood or a framed-in air pocket on your exterior wall, you're framing in such a way, like with these ladder tees, for instance, that you can actually insulate that wall, like you see here. There are other methods as well. These are just a couple of options. Then this is your advanced framing. So, for instance, making sure that you're 16 on center if you're 2x4s, or you're 24 on center if you're framing with 2x6s, and that you just have one pair of king and jack studs around your windows and doors, or at the very least, you're not installing more framing on your exterior walls. That's required for structural reasons. So no additional cripples are allowed. So to recap, if you do that advanced framing method, then you must address the corners, the headers, limit the framing at the windows and doors, think about your interior-exterior wall intersections, and then your minimum stud spacing. So these are all requirements if you go that advanced framing method route. Of course, you can also do any of the other methods if you would like as well. So as I mentioned, thinking about thermal bridging is really critical to do up front, because as you can imagine, if you forgot to address it and you go out on site after the home is already framed, it's really tough to change how your corners were framed, for instance. So that's something that you want to address really early. But continuing along in the thought of having a tight building envelope, you want to make sure that any chases, like you see here in the picture on the left, have an airtight cap on them, like you see in the picture on the right, just capped with some OSB and some foam sealing that edge. And you want to do this anywhere there might be a hole or where you're not going to install wallboard. You want to make sure when your trades cut through this great framing job that you've done, that they seal up what they've cut through. So that goes for electricians and plumbers, cable guys, HVAC contractors, whomever. If your framers have worked long and hard to ensure that you have an airtight envelope, you want to make sure that if anybody cuts through it, it's going to be sealed up again. Then there's additional air sealing for all the other miscellaneous spots where you might see daylight around the envelope. For instance, sealing around your windows and doors, between the rough openings, sealing your subfloor to bottom plate, etc. And here's one picture that you can see daylight coming through, which means air comes through it also, so that would need to be sealed. This is around your tub going into the subfloor, but that's just one example. You want to seal anywhere that air could potentially move from the conditioned space to the unconditioned space to create that continuous air barrier and thermal boundary. Then you can think about insulating your project, and as I said, it doesn't matter what type of insulation you use, as long as it's installed well, it meets the right specs. This is a really beautiful job of cellulose that's been installed. This is a really pretty job of fiberglass bats that have been installed. I'd suggest that you find a contractor that pays close attention to the quality of their installation jobs, and then find out what product they use, rather than trying to go maybe for a particular product and finding a guy that has a great installation job. But we're finding more and more that these high-quality installation jobs are becoming more commonplace. So that's good news for all of us. Here's a picture of a horrible installation job. And I think we can all just visually have this gut reaction to whether or not it's good or bad. Your rater will be actually judging how well your insulation is installed on a particular scale. But essentially, you want the insulation installed in contact with the air barrier and complete and flush and not restricted in any way or any gaps or compression. Because if, for instance, you go to a home that's already been insulated and already has drywall up and you take a picture with an infrared camera like you can see here, you can see that there's unwanted heat transfer in this photo. It's really expensive to fix at this point, and you would not get your ENERGY STAR certification if this occurred in your building, so make sure you're thinking about it up front. I'm going to move on along a little bit. As I mentioned, the rater field checklist includes items about the thermal enclosure, as I've discussed, and more, as well as items about the HVAC system in terms of the systems that you're selecting and the quality of your insulation job. So I'm going to touch on those a little bit later, but I don't want you to forget that the rater is also going to be looking at those for you as well. But let's move on to the next checklist, which is the HVAC design report. So this will be completed by the group that does your HVAC design. We're seeing some groups use their rater to do this, and other groups use their HVAC contractor to do this. But it includes these 5 sections that you see here about an overview of design, about ventilation, about room-by-room load calculations, equipment selection, and duct design. So there's a good bit of detail there, but the organizations that have been credentialed should be well qualified to achieve these items. I just threw in a picture here of a kind of basic method of achieving the whole house ventilation that's required for the program, with a damper and a timer here. But there are many different methods of achieving ventilation, but I want to make sure that you're aware that this is something that is not in the typical home, so but is required for all ENERGY STAR certified homes. The Manual J is the guidebook which your HVAC designer will use to calculate how much heat is really required to be removed from your homes in the summer to keep it cool and comfortable, and vice versa in the winter. So room by room load calculations are required, which means that your HVAC designer will take information about your plans and your specifications in a system and determine what size equipment is appropriate. And these are just some screenshots of some output reports. And then, as I mentioned, that HVAC design report is really done early on in the process. The HVAC commissioning checklist is done at startup of your system. So looking at commissioning, looking at charge if you have a heat pump, for instance, looking at airflow. And then there's a section on balancing supply registers and return grills, which is recommended but not required. That's why I have it in the parentheses here. But wanted to just give you a high-level overview of different items your HVAC contractor will be looking at throughout this process. And then finally, the last checklist or list of requirements for the program is about really durability of your project. It's called the Water Management System Builder Requirement. So it has to do with different elements of your site and foundation, your walls, your roof, and ensuring in general that your building materials are not going to be damaged from moisture before they're installed. And this is not exactly called a checklist. It's called the Water Management System Builder Requirements, because the builder will actually be taking the bulk of the responsibility for ensuring that these items are integrated into your project rather than another trade. So to recap, we've talked early on about the logistical training requirements for the program, and then we got into a little bit into the building requirements, talking about house size, the initial requirements, which really require you to work closely with your rater, the rater design review checklist, field checklist, the design HVAC report, the commissioning HVAC checklist, and then letting you know that there is that water management checklist as well. So if you're an owner or a builder getting ready to start your next ENERGY STAR Home certified project, your next steps would be A, go find and partner with a home energy rater. As I said, you can go to the partner locator that I showed you earlier on the ENERGY STAR website, or you can go to the ResNet website, which Audrey helpfully pointed out. And please call a couple of them, vet them to make sure that you'll have a successful partnership. And then make sure that you, yourself as the builder, has signed up as an ENERGY STAR partner and attended that short training online. And make sure that you partner with a credentialed HVAC contractor. So I would do those now. Even if you're not planning to build an ENERGY STAR home for 9 more months, go ahead and get these 3 out of the way so that you'll be ready to go the next time you have a job. As soon as you do have a job in mind, in sight, that's viable and that will be pursuing the ENERGY STAR certification, I would suggest that you focus in on these 3 things. First, the framing plans, particularly in regard to the thermal bridging, which I mentioned, the HVAC design, which might take a little bit of back and forth between your HVAC designer and your rater, and then your ventilation design, because that is one of the more unique parts of the HVAC system that will be required for the ENERGY STAR program. So getting all of those in line will be critical to making sure that you're set up for success on your next project. And just thinking about this in terms of the development stages of an affordable housing project, the partnerships with your rater, the trainer part of the builder, and the credentialing of your HVAC contractor, as I mentioned, that can happen early on. The framing plans, HVAC design, ventilation design, and getting your rater to sign off on their first checklist can really happen early in the concept stage or pre-development stage of your project. Then later on, in the later pre-development stages of your project, you might want to think about inserting specific language from the ENERGY STAR checklist into the RFP that you're putting out to find a general contractor or trades, or actually put it into the contract that you have with your trades. Have a pre-construction meeting with all the trades together and your rater so that everyone's aware of their responsibilities and what might be different than the standard home that they're required to implement in this process. And then make sure that you have a communication plan worked out with your rater during the construction phase so that they'll be able to come out to your project at the right time to review everything that's necessary. And as long as all of the checks that they're required to do pan out, after the home is completed, they'll be able to arrange to give you the official ENERGY STAR certificate for your home. So that's an overview, high-level overview of the program and the requirements and some suggested next steps. Here are a couple of resources. EnergyStar.gov, which has all the information on the HOMES program, and the 2 websites you see below are the specific sites you can go to find those credentialed HVAC contractors. And because I actually didn't put the ResNet website here, I'm going to type it in to the chat box so that everyone can know where to go. So let me do that right now. All right. So you have that as well. So I think that concludes my part of the presentation. I'm going to go back to the page which talks about next steps, and then review and see what questions have come in on the site so far. Okay, so one question David Harms asked, on the advanced framing, we run into issues here with some of the requirements that we need to use on building corners for hurricane wind resistance. How is that addressed? So the framing that is required to meet your structural guidelines in your area to meet code, for instance, for these hurricane force winds, et cetera, are allowable and acceptable for the Energy Star program. So there shouldn't be any issues there. In a sense, if there's a code requirement for safety that goes above and beyond what the Energy Star program requires, you need to follow that stricter code requirement. And then also there's a question that says, the slide that starts with the list house size, what do I call that list as a whole? Building requirements? And yes, that is what I was calling that list, building requirements. That's not an official Energy Star term. That's what I'm using to classify the information, but that's right. And then I'm going to look again here. I think a few other questions have come in. Here we go. Deborah Lombard asked, are there any particular home energy modeling software programs that are allowed or not allowed to be used to get Energy Star certification? And the answer is yes. Through the Energy Star program and through ResNet, which really oversees all the home energy raters, there are certain softwares, there are only certain softwares which are approved for your rater to use to do that modeling, to determine how close or far away you are from your Energy Star target. So when you're working with your rater, they'll be able to ensure that they're using the proper software. Let's see what other questions are here. One more question from David Harms. Can you discuss pros and cons of putting the energy rater under the general contractor and contracting for an Energy Star house as a turnkey product? It's a great question. And actually, Donna, could I ask you to unmute David Harms to give a little bit more information about that question to make sure that I can answer it appropriately?
Sure. Let me see if David is on the phone, however. He does not appear to be on the phone.
Okay. If you're meaning David, well, let me see. There are builders today, and who have done this many, many times in the past, that build their spec homes as an Energy Star product, and that is fine to do. So there are many general contractors that have great relationships with raters, and they, in a sense, build Energy Star certified homes as a turnkey product. So yes, that is perfectly fine to do if that was the intent of your question. If not, I will share my email address at the end, and we can follow up afterwards. And Donna, there was a question about, can attendees get a copy of the presentation slides? Can you share that protocol?
Absolutely. As mentioned before, the session has been recorded, so an archive will be created on our website, and all attendees will be getting a link to that, and that will include not only the recording, but also downloadable copies of the presentation slides.
Great. Thanks, Donna.
Mm-hmm.
So, David, thanks for bearing with us. I see that you've entered some clarification about your earlier question and saying we are hiring a home builder and asking them to hire the rater so that they can better integrate value engineering opportunities on getting to the rating threshold. I think that's just fine. We've seen that happen in various parts of the country. So I think what's really critical is that your general contractor or your builder and your rater have they need to have a good relationship. You know, you don't need to be in a situation where if your rater comes out on site and does an inspection and just says, you fail, and walk away. You know, that's not the type of relationship you want to have between your builder and your rater. Instead, you want to have a rater that comes out on site and says, well, you failed this and this and this, but if you tweak the way that your insulation is installed in this manner, then you can pass. You know, so it's really helpful to have really open and communicative and just open lines of communication between your builder and your rater, so that if something isn't exactly as it needs to be in your rater's eyes, that they can explain that in a really clear, concise way to your builder, so the fix can be made really quickly and without much cost, and your rater can look at it the next time and give you a pass. So what we often see is that the first time that a rater comes out to a site, that there are going to be things that aren't quite up to snuff to the Energy Star program. So it's natural to expect a little bit of back and forth between your rater and your general contractor and your trades in order to get the right final specs. So I think those are all the questions that I've seen come in so far. We still have about 2 minutes left, so feel free to type in a question if we haven't addressed something that's pressing for you. I'm going to scroll through here again.
Krista, one came in that I just saw pop up. Following up to a previous question, what are the allowed software programs listed on the Energy Star website?
You know, honestly, off the top of my head, I'm not sure of all the software programs that are approved, and I don't want to just give a partial list. So I will look that information up, though, and I can email it out to everyone that signed on today. So just as a reminder, this was our Energy Star Home Certification webinar. And the next one that we have on tap is June 8th with energy benchmarking. And we'll be sharing information on that webinar from some partners in the Gulf that have been making some great progress in benchmarking the energy consumption of their projects, as well as highlight a couple new tools that I'm working on at Enterprise with HUD to develop to help make that process easier for multifamily owners. So hope you'll join us in June. I'm going to do one quick last pass through the Q&A.
We did have a question that popped into the chat list, which is what criteria goes into deciding which certifications Enterprise chooses?
Yeah, so I'm guessing you're asking why we chose to require Energy Star certification for the energy efficiency component of green communities criteria. So if you're certifying a home to the Enterprise Green Communities program and it's new construction, you need to certify it to Energy Star as well. The reason that we made that decision is because Energy Star is really the one and only energy efficiency program for homes that's nationally run and recognized, widely recognized as a standard for efficient home building. It's not only that it has a strong efficiency standard, but it has this whole network of home energy raters associated with it, with all the checks and balances and trainings and everything to ensure that builders and owners can work with partners and verify that the standards are met in their homes in a good way. So we really value that and rely on the Energy Star program to cover the basics of ensuring that our homes, our building shells are efficient and our homes will be durable and comfortable as well. So there really weren't any competitors in our mind when we chose that to reference in our program. But, you know, I do want to make sure everyone knows that there's a different way of doing things for rehabs of existing buildings. This is really focused on new construction or really full gut rehabs of projects. So I think that's it. I think we're at time, and I think share the information that we planned on and answered all the questions that were submitted. So I will follow up with a question about the software. And please, anyone, feel free to reach out with any questions you have at any time. We'll direct you to other local resources that might be able to answer your questions well in the Gulf region, and or happy to connect you to the Energy Star team at EPA, which really has the final say and the best answers to all the questions that you might have as well. So thanks for joining, and hope to see you in June.
Thanks, Krista. Thanks, Monica. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you online again very soon. Goodbye.